Welcome, everybody, to Indiana Basketball Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Grueling Truth is powered by Betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Make sure you check them out at Betting.net. I am your co-host for the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. I'd like to welcome in my co-host, 1981 national champion, a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing fine this morning, Mike. Good to be online with you and get back to talking about IU basketball as we head into the meat of the season now. We get into Big Ten play here after one more tune-up game.
Yeah, and last night, Indiana, the game was a tale of two halves. Indiana against Northern Kentucky. And I don't know. My takeaway is this: the first half, Indiana was almost flawless. The second half was not flawless as they were outscored 47-41 by NKU. Is this a matter of just having a team outmatched? You're up 24 points and you kind of lose interest?
Yeah, and I noticed a lot of the second team was getting a lot of playing time in, late in the second half too, so that could skew some of the statistics. Just not to say those kids aren't worthy of getting playing minutes. It's just that they haven't spent the time on the court that the first unit has, or the first group, the 7 or 8 or 9 that he's running in his rotation right now. So I watched the second half and felt kind of the same thing, have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth right after it. But then as I kind of replayed some of the plays and looked at it and took a better look at the personnel that was in at the time, I kind of got a feeling as to why we might have gotten outscored. More concerned about the fact that we got outscored is that we gave up 47 points in the second half. I didn't like that at all. For us considered to be such a strong defensive unit, I know Indiana tradition states that we expect every player to come in and make the same contribution that any player that they came in for did, and we may have fallen off that a little bit, which could be a little alarming. But I think what the comment you made is true. Being up so much and making that kind of a routine, I think that gets a little mundane for these players a little bit too. I think these guys, looking at them play, are excited about getting in the race with some of the big boys now, and going to get after it and have to fight and claw a little bit to win games.
Yeah, my only question about giving up 47 points, the second five at Indiana is probably better than what the first five for Northern Kentucky is.
Right.
That still worries me a
But are
little
they as
bit.
cohesive? Are they as cohesive playing together? Um, that's the question. There's no doubt they're as talented as the first five of Northern Kentucky, but are they as cohesive and as battle ready to play in a game situation? Which, as a head coach and a quarterbacks coach, practicing and playing are two different environments.
Yeah, and Trace Jackson Davis, 21 points, 9 of 11 for shooting. Race Thompson, 7 for 9, 14 points. I think when I look at this, though, this team's success is going to rest on Xavier Johnson and Rob
Yeah,
Fennessy. You got to have a point guard step up here and kind of take over and lead this team.
I agree. And Xavier Johnson's starting to make that move a lot now. Finney came in and gave, I thought, were some very solid minutes, and you see his play just continuing to improve and get stronger and stronger. I could get to a point to where I might see both of them in the backcourt together, and that becomes a fairly formidable Big Ten backcourt because Xavier Johnson is really, despite all the criticism he got early for some of his turnovers and play, is really turning into a solid player. And I was reading some statistical analysis by one of these Ken Pong type situations that say that when he's playing, our points per game, our points per possession goes way up. And it goes up too when Finney's in the game as well. But more so than any other player, when you have Johnson in the game, he has a bigger effect on points per possession than any player. Um, that surprised me because you would think Trace Jackson would have that, but I think Trace's numbers are so far out there already. It's kind of like when somebody says they're the fastest growing. Well, it's because you started at zero, and it's easier to grow than when you start at 100 and got to get to 110. that's harder to grow. So, but I agree with you. I think right now this team has a front court that's the envy of most all coaches in college basketball right now. There are very few that could look at it clearly and say their front court's stronger or better than these two. What I'd like to see Miller Kopp doing, he's become a little more involved in the offense and taking more shots and putting up more than 3 and 4 and 5 points a game. I think he's definitely capable of doing that. And all that does is helps alleviate pressure on Race and on Trace a lot, Race and Trace a lot. So get Miller more involved, keep Xavier growing, and Finney continue to develop and bring it on. And I think this team's going to continue to get better as they get into the early part of the Big Ten season.
Yeah, now the thing that surprised most people last night is Indiana's starting lineup for the first 11 games had been the same. That was until last night. Sophomore Anthony Leal made his first start in place of Parker Stewart. Parker Stewart's played outstanding this year, and Parker didn't get in until I think like the 14 or 15 minute mark of the second half. So
Did he
I
get
think
in?
something.
I thought they were saying he didn't even get in the first half.
No, he didn't. That's what I said. 14 or 15 minutes less than the second half is
The
when he
second half,
got
right?
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Anthony Leal played really well. I'm sure just from watching Coach Woodson's statements, something happened there. I'm glad that we have a coach now that will actually do something if there's an issue. But the great thing here is Anthony Leal the last couple games has really stepped up and played very well.
Yeah, definitely so. And he pulls in 21 minutes in last night's game, so that's playing half a game. That's good for him. Parker got 8 minutes, 8 minutes and 28 seconds, I guess.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling, and that's right out of Coach Knight's book about doing something like that. I don't think he's seen the last of Parker Stewart at all. And it
No.
would not surprise me if he's back in the starting lineup next game. I think a message was delivered to Parker about something in terms of grades, maybe practice, commitment levels, and things like that. And Mike, as you said, that's a great thing we haven't seen in a while. Where with some of the previous coaches, we were like didn't want to honk them off for fear that they would leave or something like that. And I think here Woody's going to take the mentality that you and I are both used to. Me as a player and you as a diehard IU basketball fan in those days. Before you read Knight's 14th book.
Actually, I love Knight's book because talking to guys like you and other guys that played at IU, I realized, there
Oh
might have
no!
been an issue.
Don't get me involved.
Okay, well, I'm not going to go any further.
I have it on. I have it on authority that Coach Knight listens to our show.
Well, good for
So,
Coach Knight. I mean,
yeah.
that obviously tells you can't get out much anymore.
It also knows I didn't get a Christmas present from him this year either. So
When's the last time you got a Christmas present from Coach Knight?
we actually used to get the former player used to get something usually from Adidas. Something sent from Adidas, but that went away a long time ago. Then we used to get the program and a poster, and we don't even get those anymore. So, but anyway, that's beside the point.
All right.
So I wouldn't be too fearful of Parker Stewart. I think that was a wake up call for him, and I think Mike's sold on a starting lineup. But what's nice to see is you can get an Anthony Leal in there like that. It doesn't damage the offensive routine or structure or anything. And that's the breadth of depth of this basketball team. You can go, we had fantasy, you're already 7-8 players deep into it right there. And we've seen before him using pretty much up to a 9-man rotation. And that's going to be great in the Big Ten because I've got the next 4 games are all bunched up pretty tight here. They'll play 4 games between the 29th and the 13th. And 2 of those on the road, and 4 of those are Big Ten play, which gets a lot more physical.
And they're all very winnable games. Now, last Saturday, Indiana probably had their best win of the season against Notre Dame. Even though Notre Dame came into the game 4-4, they were coming off a win the week before against the University of Kentucky. Now, the thing that struck me here is with Notre Dame's smaller lineup, IU did what you talked about there, where they did go long stretches playing Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney together on the court at the same time to match up
Hmm.
with Notre Dame's smaller lineup.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked well because when he made that move, we were behind a good part of the first half, if not all the first half. As I remember, I can't. That was 2 games ago, and uh, yeah, but then when he put those two in the second half, and they got a lot of playing time together, we took control of that basketball game. But again, I think what you said is right. Notre Dame right now is much like Indiana's relied on the last 20 years, is a brand name that really didn't have the substance behind the brand name.
Well, Notre
I
Dame's
think I
issue
think
is
it's a good name win for Indiana, but I didn't
uh,
see Notre Dame being as good as any other of these opponents we played so
well,
far
they
this
did beat
year.
Kentucky though, which is a
Yeah,
top 10 or
well,
15 team. I mean, it's a
that
good
might be a
win.
situation too where Kentucky beat themselves. I did not see that game, so
I watched the game. Notre Dame actually played pretty well. I think Notre
okay,
Dame's issue is they've got players that can play with anybody. They don't have a bench
yeah,
that can, though, and they just kind of get worn down in most games. The Kentucky game, they jumped out to a lead and held on. They jumped out to a lead against IU. Things didn't look great in the first 10, 15 minutes of the game. But then IU just kind of wore them down. And the thing I took away from it that is somewhat worrisome is 16 assists to 14 turnovers. Still too many turnovers. But the
yeah.
thing that strikes me about this team compared to teams we've seen the last 5 or 6 years, this team seems to be much less selfish on the offensive end.
Oh, this is one of the most unselfish IU basketball teams I've seen in a long time. I mean, just watching the flow of it last night, the extra passes that they made, and almost every time they made that extra pass, we got an easy bucket out of it. I mean, there was one time I saw them come down and they took it all the way around the horn completely on the perimeter. And I think that Trace Jackson ended up with a smooth, nobody even guarding him dunk when Cott just dumped it right into him from the other baseline. But this team's unselfish. They're willing to share the ball. Their spacing on offense is very good. Um, as anybody will tell you, and Woodson will be the first to tell you as well too, is that the defense always comes in before the offense does. It's easier to teach defense than it is offense because defense is 80 to 90% hustle and being in position. And you can take away athleticism pretty good if you're willing to play hard and you're willing to be in position. Offensively, it's a little harder. When you have to go against some of these great leapers and things like that. But for the point we are in the season right now, I really like where our offense is in. I'm not happy about the turnovers because year to date, we're averaging 15.4 turnovers a game, where our opponents are only 12.4.
Yeah, and that's
Now,
against a not tough schedule, too.
yeah, exactly. That's against teams that are not real good. Exactly, not handling the ball well. And I don't know, Mike. Have you what you watched? I've not really seen IU make a lot of stupid turnovers. They're just. I think the turnovers are coming from trying to make things happen
Well, I think
and
this,
maybe
Steve, from
trying to go
watching
too
them,
fast. Go
from
ahead.
watching them to me, I mean, I think this is kind of where you want the team to be. You don't want to be clicking on all cylinders right
No,
now because not many
no,
teams run through the entire year. I think what we've seen is offensively, they've moved the ball very well in spurts. I mean, they need to get more consistent with them. And I think with the spurts is how you end up with the 14 turnovers because when the spurts aren't good, they're bad. And I think a guy who's going to play a huge role in this season off the bench is Anthony Leal. And if you look at this, Tamar Bates missed the game because he was at a funeral. And Anthony Leal played really well 3 assists, 1 steal in 16 minutes off the bench. And I think he's a guy that knows his role. He's a spot up shooter. His job's to play hard on defense. I think he's doing that. And college basketball is won with guards. You know, whether it was Mateen Cleaves in Michigan
sure.
State or Magic Johnson in Michigan State, you win with guard play, because let's face it,
Isaiah Thomas in Indiana.
yeah, Trace Jackson Davis and Thompson are only going to be effective if you can get the ball to them
Ball to them.
in good positions where they can score. You don't want a guy that is making bad decisions here, because then it takes the ball out of your best player's hands. So I think with Fennessy, Johnson, and Leo, you've got the guys there, and I mean, I think Indiana's sitting in good shape right now. I think this is the best shape we've been at this point in the season since what, 2016 or so.
I would agree 100%. And what you were just for talking about is shown by what our shooting percentages are right now. For the season, where is Indiana's team statistics here? I'm going to put my glasses back on.
Well,
There's my wife dressed like my wife is dressed like Santa Claus, getting ready to go. Come and say hi to everybody, Tia. Come and say hi.
I bet Tia's waving you off right now.
There she is. Over here. Here's Tia, dressed as Santa Claus, going to work.
Morning.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. Morning in Los Angeles.
So that's basically what, a reindeer pulling a Lexus?
Yeah. Don't we wish? Shooting percentage, too many field goals. Let me see here. What's it say? I don't see just shooting percentages on the season stats. I'm sure it's on here somewhere. All right. We're shooting at a clip right now on 2-point field goals for the season at 49%. That's attributed to be 50% on your shots on 2-point land is getting the ball in the right position, as you said. It's getting the ball around, and it's due to strong guard play, not trying to rush the pass or get the pass in too quick. 3-point field goals, we're at 37%, which I think is fairly strong for a college
if they do that all year, they're going to win 24,
they're going to be
25
fine.
games. Yeah, we'll be in good
if
shape.
You can shoot 50% for the season from 2-point range and 37% from 3-point range. Now, what's concerning is our free throw percentage is atrocious.
Yeah.
There's no sense. We're at 67% on free throws, and that's something that, and free throws are the ding hardest thing in the world to ever to coach. I mean, there's no, I don't know what you do to coach free throws anymore. Shoot them when you're tired.
Well, free throws are just about how much the guys are willing to practice shooting free throws.
Yeah, well, it's like how much concentration do you put when you practice shooting free throws? Because generally what you do is in practice, at least in Indiana, I'm sure Mike's running it this way. That's when you take a break, get a bottle of water and go down with another guy and let's do free throws and that was always considered a rest time. So that's your time to talk to the other player, kind of just chill out a little bit, relax. You're not as focused for the next 5 or 10 minutes that you're shooting. And I think maybe that's a little bit of a misnomer, that if that's still happening in college basketball, that's something that needs to be checked for a team like Indiana that is going to get into a crunch situation where, and we've seen it happen this year already, where we've gone down the stretch and missed 4 or 5 big free throws. Fortunately, most of those times we're in a far enough lead, it hasn't killed us. But you don't want that to become a liability to your free throw shooting, because it will make differences in the Big Ten. But offensively, the shooting percentages are solid. Our opponents are still being held down to 30% shooting from 2-point range and the low 30s or even worse. 27% right around in there from the 2-point range.
Yeah, but the problem is, Steve, we're holding everybody to 27%, except for people with the last name of Boeheim, which are shooting like 80%.
Yeah, well, and you're going to run into that. You're going to run into good shooting teams that are going to do that. So that's where you've got to get your perimeter defense stepped up. And I've seen Indiana play some very good perimeter defense when they want to, or I don't know if it's when they want to, but I've seen them play good perimeter defense.
That's usually when you want to, Steve. Defense is all about want to. So I would say you've seen them play defense when they wanted to. I think the issue as a coach It's getting these guys like Coach Knight did to want to play defense for 40 minutes
Yeah.
instead of just when they feel like playing defense. All right, so you talked about we're getting ready to move into the meat of the schedule, which is the Big Ten. So we're going to take a look at the Big Ten right now.
Well, before we do
And
that, let me
yeah,
just, can I just address something that's kind of been on everybody's bucket, in everybody's bucket for the whole season? And
okay.
that's the weak opponents we've been playing in preseason, and how, you and I both have made comments to that effect. And I was reading an article by Jeff Rabijons, who's a well-respected beat writer for college basketball, and he quoted Mike as saying, and this is Mike's quote words: "If I can get the Kentucky series back, I'd love to get that back with Calipari. If we can get a series with UCLA or somebody out west, you have to put games in place to test your team. And so, I think that Mike is on a mission to get that done. Get the team. I'd love to have a team like you said. Obviously, I'd be able to go right, over to Pauley, which is half hour from my house, and go watch how you play in person, which would be a treat. Getting Kentucky back on would be huge for Indiana.
I like to see the
Um,
Louisville rivalry back.
the Louisville rivalry, now that the Patino's out of there, Indiana may want to renew that rivalry. And I'd love to see maybe not either North Carolina or Duke on a preseason schedule, or even a Gonzaga. A Gonzaga would be a great preseason team for Indiana to play. Two similar style of programs. So, and I'm sure that's all being discussed. But when this quote came from Mike through Rabijons, it made me feel good that as I thought would have happened, because I know Mike, and I know Mike and I grew up playing in the exact same era on the same teams, and we relished playing those teams. We didn't relish getting beat by them, which we did half the time, because we were never a strong preseason team in our 4 years there. But the opportunity to play those teams, the Kansases, the Kansas States, the North Carolinas, the Kentuckys, those were always fun games to get up for and go play. Because then you got into the Big Ten and you were playing the Ohio States, the Michigan States, the Purdue's. And that's what the game should be about, not blowing teams out by 30, 40 points every game. That's no fun for anybody, really. It's a nice payday for Northern Kentucky as they come into Assembly Hall and get the biggest paycheck they're going to get all season long, I guarantee you. But in terms of testing anybody's ability, it's not a lot of fun.
No, it wasn't a lot of fun to watch either.
No, it wasn't. No.
Because I would like to
But,
go to, I'd like to go to an IU game, but it's like a 2 hour drive, and I don't want to drive that far to watch them play Northern Kentucky or Eastern
well,
Michigan.
I can get you tickets if you'd
I
like to
know, but
go.
I don't want to drive that far until it gets a little more serious. Yeah. If it
Well,
would
you
have
know
been
what?
NKU 3 years ago, it would have been a good matchup, but it's
I'll
not.
tell you
This is a
this right
different
now. The
program.
more serious the game gets, the closer to the band you're going to be sitting.
Is that bad?
You don't want to sit next to the band.
Let's see. Actually, NKU played DePaul tough this year. They only lost to them by 9. But then they got blown out by Purdue, Fort Wayne, and Cleveland State. So that must have just been, what do they call it, an anomaly. All right, let's go ahead and let's take
IU's had a lot of anomalies in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And also, real quick, we are powered by betting.net. Now, betting.net compares the best online casinos. Sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games. Check out betting.net. All right, our last segment here, we're going to take just a quick preview of the Big Ten as it's coming in. And I think when we look at it, we know Nebraska, Penn State,
Well, I
Rutgers
tell you what, Mike,
are all
before
in
we get
trouble.
there, why don't we talk just briefly about the next 4 games for Indiana?
Because we
Uh,
are right after that.
after that. Okay, you
Yeah.
want to go into that and then talk about, okay, I'm
Yeah, we'll
sorry.
just wrap it up with the kind of previewing the next couple games or
All
so.
right. Well,
But
I didn't get your agenda at 6:00 this
that's
morning.
because I didn't have an agenda until just now.
I just realized this morning what it's like to take a shower at 6:00 in the morning again.
What's it like?
It sucks.
Why's that? You tell me you
Well,
always get up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I know I go to the beach and take surf lessons and then come home and shower.
Okay. All right.
And I do not take surf lessons.
Gunners. What? Gunners boss. Boss Mike and Steve in the house on the Grilly Trip Network. Is matchups overrated in basketball? I'm not really sure what he means there, Steve.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If you want to clarify that, I'll address it. We'll both address it for you. But I'm
All
not
right.
sure. What are you talking about? Game matchups or player matchups?
I don't know.
Give us
He'll
a
ex-
little bit more definition of what you're looking for,
All
and
right.
I will
So
definitely give you my opinion. And I know Mike will give you his opinion.
I'm kind of shy sometimes. When we look at this, I think when you look at the Big Ten, there's sections here. I think you've got the top section, which is the top three teams, which I think, without a doubt, are Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan State. Then you got a second
Agreed.
level where you've got Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana. And then you've got a third level where you've got Northwestern and Minnesota. And the reason I put them on a separate level is neither one of them have really played anybody yet. They both have like 8-0, 9-1 records. But if we think Indiana's schedule is bad, Minnesota and Northwestern's even worse. Now Northwestern, we had a chance to see this last weekend how good they were because they played a Big East team in DePaul, but the game was canceled due to COVID. So teams like Minnesota and Northwestern, we really don't know about yet, Steve, because they haven't played anybody. And then you get the Michigan Wolverines, who I think a lot of questions surround this team. So when you look at it, and Iowa, same thing, they haven't played the greatest schedule. So to me, there's like six teams here capable of winning this conference. I think that there's probably 10 teams capable of making a run to the tournament. Right now, do you agree the three top teams are Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan State?
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Who do you think's the best of the three?
Right now, I think it's the Boilers. I think Purdue is by far the most equipped to get through the Big Ten season physicality wise and depth wise. And Painter's been through this a number of times and knows how to coach in the Big Ten. Generally competes for the Big Ten title every year. So I like Purdue right now, but you can never rule out Izzo and Michigan State.
Well, and Ohio
and
State beat Duke.
in Ohio State, Chris out there coaching Ohio State. It's hard to separate those three until you start to see them play each other.
Now, I'll tell you this. I think when you look at 4, 5, and 6, I think the team most likely to join them as one of the four best teams is Indiana because I think Indiana has a higher ceiling than Illinois or Wisconsin. And I mean, the Wisconsin game was kind of like the Northern Kentucky game last night. Only Wisconsin's a lot better than Northern Kentucky. But when you look at this Hoosier team, I think they're talented enough to drop up there or jump up there with those top three. I expect Indiana to be the top four in this conference by the time the season's over.
Well, they're heading that way for sure. I mean, you always got to be careful with injuries popping up. We've been very lucky. We're 12 games into the season and really have lost nobody to injuries yet. So knock on some veneer here and be happy about that. Is that your dog whining or mine?
I don't know. Players matchups is what Gunner meant.
Okay. Well, we'll get to Gunner's question here in just a second. Let's finish this up. So yeah, I think Indiana will work their way into it. I think they're a talented team. I think I was kind of surprised that they weren't rated at least 24th or 25th in this last poll. But I think some people are waiting to see Indiana play some
it's a lack
teams.
of a quality win.
It's a lack of a quality team.
Notre Dame is a good team, but Notre Dame's not going to be in the tournament. If they're going to be in the tournament, it'll be
they've got probably their only signature win of the season.
Well, they play in the ACC. They play enough games. They'll probably get a couple more, but they're going to be below 500 in the ACC. I don't even think they qualify.
They'll struggle to make
the
tournament.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the games coming up. If you just want to touch on that real quick, Steve.
Yeah, we've got we get a week off. The players get a week off virtually now, which is nice. Take a break, get everybody rested a little bit, go home to your families for a few days. And then we come back on the 29th and play UNC Asheville, which I don't know much about. I'm familiar with UNC Charlotte, but Asheville I'm not, just how good they are.
They beat Milligan last night, or let's see, they beat Milligan a week ago, 114-54. If that tells you anything, they lost to
114
Tennessee
to 4.
Martin. Um, they beat West Carolina, lost to Chattanooga, beat the
So they're going to fit
Citadel.
right in the mold as the other teams we play. The
Uh,
other,
they lost 72-53 to North Carolina, and North Carolina's not really a bunch of studs this year. So
yeah,
I would say you're probably going to get something. They might be a little bit better than NKU was, but not much.
yeah. So, and I'm sure their recruiting is getting tougher on these teams as this ability to pay players now, wanting to take the money and sit on a bench at a bigger school if you can get paid some money for that while being there. So anyway, then we get into the Big Ten schedule. We open up going to Penn State on the 2nd. So the schedule gets tight again. Now, I'll just say this: going to Happy Valley is not an easy place to get to. It's not an easy place to play. So that's a tough opener. Indiana has been about 50-50
See,
as much as I can
I
remember.
don't think it's a tough opener. I think they destroyed Penn State. Penn State's lost multiple games at home already this year. They
Yeah,
got beat by Ohio State
yeah.
76-64. They lost on the road to Michigan State 80-64. They lost at home to Miami of Florida. They lost at home to LSU. So I don't think Penn State's near as good as what they have been the last couple of years.
Fair. But then after that, we come back 4 days later and we'll get a taste of how good we are real quick as
Yes.
we entertain Ohio State. That'll
Yeah.
be really the first huge test for Indiana. Big Ten team, physical play. Team has been ranked on top of the Big Ten representation on the rankings most of the season. Them and all Purdue and, as you said, Michigan State. But they're the predominant teams that have been ranked, and we'll get a look at it right away. And then they come right behind that 3 days later, and they host Minnesota, an unknown quantity, as you said.
Well,
We just
they've
don't know
played.
what they're going to bring.
They've got a couple decent ones. All indications
Any
to
any Big
me.
Ten team, any Big Ten team is going to be tougher to play than the opponents we played to date.
I don't know about that. I think
And
Nebraska will struggle with
I'll
NKU.
say that.
Nebraska's bad. So
Yeah, well,
I think there's a possibility Nebraska would, go life and death against Northern Kentucky. Seriously, that's how bad
right.
Nebraska. I
But
mean, Nebraska.
Minnesota, you don't know about. You just don't have an idea
I
of
think
what
this.
they're going to
I
bring.
think Minnesota is going to be a good team. I think they're going to be
It's
around a
going to be a good
500
game, yeah.
team. They're going to be a dangerous opponent. So, I mean,
Well,
it
the
would be a
interesting
big
thing to
win.
me, Mike, is what I think you're going to see is I think you're going to see the Big Ten teams just bigger in size, um, more physicality on the teams, kids with broader shoulders, kids with a few more inch height, and let's see what our front court does. Not playing against teams that they just dominate by sheer athleticism and size alone. Now, and so now, Race and Trace are going to have to go against guys that have been well coached, that are as big, if not bigger than them. And let's see how they react to that. And it's a good start. We should come out of the first 4 games in the Big Ten, and then they go to Iowa, which going to Iowa is good and bad. I'm gonna tell you, I used to love and hate going to Iowa on the same day. I was boarding an airplane in 1980, our Grumman jet, to take us to Iowa City, and I had a pair of headphones on, and they announced as I was walking up the stairs that John Lennon had been shot in front of the Dakota Hotel. And that's when I learned that he died. Never, one of those things you'll never forget.
I got it on Monday Night Football. Howard Cosell told me. I think the Dolphins were playing the Patriots.
Yeah, just one of
Uh,
those things you always remember.
yeah, and when you look at the schedule, I mean, the key to this whole season to me comes that Ohio State and Minnesota back to back. because I assume they're going to beat Asheville and Penn State. But if you could beat Ohio State, Minnesota back to back, I think you get people's attention.
Hmm.
And also, I think you're setting yourself up for a great year because then you're what 4-0 in the Big Ten. You're going to Iowa, then you get Nebraska, then you get number
Yeah.
3 ranked Purdue. You get Michigan, who's very beatable. Penn State, Maryland, not great teams this year. Illinois at home. I just think this sets up Indiana. To me, it would surprise me if a month from now they're not sitting in the top 20.
Oh no, I fully expect them to be. I would like to say of our first 4 Big Ten games, I would like to come out of it 3-1. I'd be very, very happy at 3-1. Thrilled.
Are you counting the
Um,
game they've already played? Or are you just talking about the next 4?
Next 4, which would put
Okay.
us, we're 1-1 in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, 3 and
And
1 would be good, but I think this team's fully capable of going 4 and
oh,
0 in those 4
I
games.
agree. We don't really know how good Ohio State is.
Well, we do
We
because they beat Duke, but the thing that stands out to me about Ohio State is that Duke win was at home. And I mean, they blew out Wisconsin at home. They beat Duke by 5 at home. They lost at Florida. Let's see. They did beat Seton Hall on the road by 3. They lost to Xavier on the road. So I think they're a much better home team than they are away team, which I think gives us a better chance there. But I mean, we're talking about a team ranked in the top 15 right now, and their losses were to number 15 Seton Hall by 3 at Seton Hall. They lost to number 18 Xavier by 6 at Xavier, and they lost to a good Florida team by 3 at Florida. Now, the thing that stands out to me, though, all those losses have an at, if you know what I mean. So
Hmm.
I don't think they are going to be as tough. Of course, everybody's tougher at home than they are on the road, but I question how good they are on the road. But then again, if you go with their 4 biggest games, I mean, playing Xavier at Xavier, playing Florida at Florida, Seton Hall at Seton Hall are all 3 really hard places to win.
Right.
So the other thing that scares me there, as I'm leading to, is the toughness of Ohio State's schedule and whether they'll be more prepared for that game
Yeah.
than they will be to
Well,
play us because it's not their first away game. I mean, they've been to places like Xavier and Seton Hall, which are really hard to win on the road at.
yeah. And like we said, Woodson appears to be addressing that situation as fast as he can.
Yeah,
We're
but it
just not
can't be
going to be able to
addressed
deal with it.
this year. The only thing that
Can't be
matters is
addressed this
this
year.
year.
Nothing we can do about it. So it's we got to go learn, and we got to we got to be productive when we're learning. But as I said, you go to Iowa. Um, Hawkeye Carver is a tough place to play too. All these Big Ten arenas, the fans get fanatical because if you go out there, it's probably on January 13th, it could be 12 below zero
Yeah, and
in
there's nothing
Iowa
to do
City.
even if it's 70.
Oh, but I'm gonna tell you the good thing about going out there is if you've never had corn-fed Iowa beef, you have never had a good steak. So
Okay, so if
uh,
we're going to Iowa for the game, which steakhouse would you recommend?
the Highlander.
The Highlander. That sounds like a
Yep.
place for a good steak. That sounds like a
Uh,
place where they'll let you kill the cow on your own and eat it.
it's the only place that I ever went to where my dinner and because you order off the menu is it was the dinner the night before, not pregame. I would get 2 New York strips. They were that good,
Hmm.
and a baked potato.
Luckily, you're not really killing me here because I'm having steak for dinner today. So,
Oh, good!
all
Congratulations.
right. Let's
But
see.
you're probably having Midwest wheat fed beef.
Midwest weed fed beef.
Yeah, I doubt that you're having Iowa corn fed.
I'm having grass fed and grass finished though. It's
Oh,
about the
okay.
same thing.
That's right.
It's
You're a
the only thing
vegan
in
or
it.
something.
I'm not a
You're a
vegan, or I
vegan.
would be eating a steak. I was a
Oh,
vegan for like 6 months because I was a lard ass and
well,
wanted to lose weight.
it did you good too. I need to get on that right away.
All right, so go eat
My
your sweet
magical start
vegetables.
date is January 3rd
Why is it January 3rd?
because I don't want to not have a margarita or something while all the college ball games are going on Saturday and Sunday.
Well, you could still have a margarita. You just can't have 10 of them, Steve.
Well, that's no fun.
All right, guys, we are going to wrap the show up. You got anything before we wrap it up, Steve?
No, let's get going. I think Indiana, Mike's preseason campaign was successful based on what he had to work with. We got through healthy. I thought the team progressed throughout the course. We don't know to what level until we play somebody like an Ohio State or a Minnesota or an Iowa. Um, coming into this 10-2, I don't know how many people legitimately thought we'd be 10-2 at this point. We should be, and it's going to be fun now to come out once we get past UNC Asheville to get into the meat of the Big Ten and see how good we are and how it goes. The big key right now, as you dive into this part of the season, is just keep everybody healthy as much as you can. And a 9-man rotation helps that a ton. You're not overplaying people. People aren't playing tired, and they're getting the rest they need. And you're keeping people out of tough situations. Of course, injuries can happen all the time, anytime in the game. But it's better to have a deep rotation and to come into Big Ten play healthy.
All right, Steve, what do you think about next Thursday at noon? We'll recap the UNC Asheville game. There's really no reason to go Sunday night because there's no game until Wednesday of next week. So you good with that?
Yeah, I'll take another 6 o'clock shower. No problem.
Okay, maybe
In
we'll do
fact,
it a little.
that may be my next shower.
Maybe we'll. I figured it would be. You're from Indiana. Um, yeah. Well, maybe we'll go a little bit later. Then we'll discuss it. We'll tweet
No,
it
no,
out. We'll
no.
let
That's
everybody
that's
know we're
fine. That
going.
time's fine.
All right, guys. So next Thursday at noon, me and Steve will be back to look back at the UNC Asheville game and a preview the Big Ten game on that Sunday against Penn State. But for now, I want to remind you, betting.net is not just for sports betting. Betting.net compares the best online casinos. And the great thing about this is if you live in Indiana, when you go to betting.net, it's not going to give you who to bet in the game. What it's going to give you is the best site to bet the game where it's legal in your state. So make sure you check out betting.net. So for Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.